This is the Literary License Podcast with your hosts, Vicky Ray, John Wilson, and Keith Shorgo. Discussing book to screen and everything in between. Coming at you from the UK and USA.
They keep it real.
Are you married?
Good question. You see, brains. The answer is no. I don't believe in it. Good for the man, lousy for the woman. She dies. She suffocates. I've seen it. And then the husband runs around complaining to everyone, the person, and he's the one who killed her. Where's your husband?
Dead.
Well, sorry, but you're one of the lucky ones. When a woman unloads a husband, or a husband unloads a woman, however it happens, death, desertion, divorce, the 3 Ds. When that happens, a woman blooms. She blossoms like flowers, like fruit. She is ripe. Yes, it is. You pissed me off. What was I supposed to do? Take it like a man? Christ, I gave you everything I got. I gave you more than anybody's ever given you. What do I get in exchange? A little thank you, a little gratitude. I'll tell you what I get. I get screwed.
Oh, cut the crap, okay? Just tell me, what do you want from us?
I want somebody to be sure. That's what I want. I want somebody to pay a little attention to me. I want a little respect. I want somebody to take care of me for a change. Huh? How about that? What do I want? Christ! What does a man want? A little affection. A little trust. God damn it. Everything I did for you. God makes mistakes. Of course he does. We all make mistakes. Of course, when we make mistakes, they call it evil. When God makes mistakes, they call it nature. Church-going folk, I really want to ask you something. Do you think God knew what he was doing when he created woman? Huh? No shit. I really want to know. Or do you think it was just another one of your mistakes like tidal waves, earthquakes, floods? You think women are like that? Or did he do it to us on purpose?
Because I really want to know. Because if it's a mistake, maybe we could do something about it. Find a cure. Invent a vaccine. Build up our immune systems. Get a little exercise. 20 push-ups a day, and you never have to be afflicted with women ever again.
Hello, welcome to Literary License Podcast, and today we're dealing with Witches of Eastwick by John Updike and film directed by George Miller. And before we get started, we'd like to introduce our two special guest co-hosts today. We have C Derick Miller, author of Taste of Home series. He's also a poet, a songwriter, and a man of all trades. Say hello, Derek.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
And our second special guest co-host is Barbara Venkataraman, who's the author of the Jamie Quinn Mystery Series. Say hello, Barbara.
Hello.
And before we get started, we like to sit there and share a little bit of what we've been up to. And of course, we have our co-host here, Vicky, with us. Unfortunately, John is not with us today because he's doing work things, because he's doing his 9-to-5 job. So he's not with us today. So say hello,
John
Vicky.
has a real job.
So too much to do as you press on forward. What we're going to discuss now is what we've been up to. So, Vicky, would you like to share with us what you've been up to?
Well, I binge watched the 100 on Netflix for the last 3 weeks. I really enjoyed that. Been starting to do a lot of more of the Shudder the series is on Shudder because we're going to have to start doing those. And I'm really enjoying the Shudder deal because it's got some really great movies on it. And I think a lot of them are a lot more well done than you'd see out of Hollywood. They're refreshingly morbid, gross, full of blood and gore, and sex too. So, yeah. And other than that, I'm just doing the family thing. And
what about yourself, Chad? What have you been working on, or what have you been up to?
Oh, wow. Well, the past 4 months of my life have been this crazy roller coaster. I don't know if you guys recall the last time I was a guest on your show, I guess back in January. If you go back and listen to it now, you could probably tell how much of a full-blown alcoholic I was. I think we started recording at 11. I began drinking at 5 a.m. I have been straight stone cold sober for 130 days now. And since that time, everything has just been falling in my lap. Of course, back in February, we had the Diary of a Gonzo Ghost Hunter release with myself and Ray as the editor, Ray Louise. God, she's so good. I loved her book, The Fear. Released a re-release of A Taste of Home a few weeks ago, and then in December, the sequel to A Taste of Home, Far From Home. Far From Home is going to hit. I'm really excited about that one. But I've been working with a lot of newspapers, like in and around where I live, as a freelance arts and entertainment columnist, and it has actually opened up a chance for me to write an expose for a large publication here in Texas regarding I say man, when I met him, he was still a boy. He was a freshman in college, but wrongfully accused of murdering his parents in this area. He's been incarcerated since 2005, and all because the logic behind this is because he was living a secret double life as a gay man, that he could murder his parents without people knowing as well. No DNA evidence, no nothing, just railroaded through the court system with a very biased, overly conservative jury. And
sounds like your typical Texas ignorance to me.
Yeah. So I've been approached to write an expose on this that is actually going to put a lot of the investigative forces in this area in the line of sight. So start answering the door with a weapon. Start answering the door with a weapon. But I mean, this is the first time I'm talking about this openly, because it's been a bit of a secret that I'm going to be involved with this project. It's going to be a lot of legal mumbo jumbo. But if any of the listeners want to know more about it, there's also a documentary film that will be screened at South by Southwest in Austin in March. go to the website freebrandon.org, and you can read a lot more about this case. So that's going to encompass my life probably over the next few months. I've got 100,000 pages plus of court documents that I have to read before I begin writing.
And what about yourself? What about yourself, Barbara? What have you been up to?
Well, it's hard to top, but well, would it be really nerdy and geeky to say I'm counting the days till the new Doctor Who?
No, it's not nerdy geeky at all.
And immersing myself in all the reruns that are nonstop 24 hours a day on TV now. But also I've been, I'm working on my 6th Jamie Quinn mystery, and I have to, in my mysteries, nobody ever gets shot with a gun. So I have to research all kinds of weird ways to kill people. And I'm really convinced the FBI is going to come knock on my door one day because of my internet search. But it's fun. It's good. I have some interesting
fascinated about all the ways I could do away with my ex-husband. I'm sure I got all kinds of ideas for you.
Yeah, that's how Sue Afton got started. She was going through a divorce. She started thinking of the ways to kill her ex-husband and decided to turn it into the alphabet mystery. So yeah, there's something to be said about that. Negative energy turned to a good cause.
Awesome. Very cool concept.
Yeah, but personally, I've been up to, I've been watching a lot of Shudder at the moment because they're a new sponsor. I also booked my tickets for Christine and the Queens, which is going to be in Brixton. And I got my tickets through www.seatgiant.com.
Oh, yeah. I got my super tickets through seatgiant.com, and I saved 20%.
Yeah, if you want to save 20% on your tickets, all you need to do is go to www.seatgiant.com and put an LL podcast in the discount code, and you too can get 20% off. That was a shameless pronunciation. But what else I've been up to? I'm reading a really good book called House by the Cemetery at the moment, which is very good. Writing a review for that at the moment. Catching up on my book reviews. And then catching up on a lot of Alfred Hitchcock sort of stuff for the coming year. So besides that, still watching The Purge and watching American Horror Story and working my 9 to 5.
I just started watching The Bates Motel finally last 2 days. I'm almost through season 1.
I got as far as season 2 on that, but I didn't get very much further on that. So I need to get involved in that eventually. But now that Assassin's Creed Odyssey's out, it will be very little time I'll be spending watching television. So
we'll never see you again.
A different screen, huh?
Yeah.
I've been watching Solo over and over and over again, trying to find a reason to like it. It really hurts my heart for there to be a Star Wars movie that's out that I don't totally agree with. So I'm going to continue watching it until I find something I like.
Yeah, I can't say that I'm a big Star Wars fan. I don't know. It kind of bypassed.
I used to be.
The only one I actually liked was Empire Strikes Back, and I think because it was dark. So,
Yeah.
That's still the bar.
So as we go forward, what we're going to be discussing today, and the first part of our series is The Witches of Eastwick, the book by John Updike, which was published in 1984. Now, the important thing to realize about John Updike is that he just came off of the Rabbit Run series, which was a Pulitzer Prize winner for him. And then he decided to delve into womanhood and feminism in The Witches of Eastwick. In 1984, the book, The Witches of Eastwick, was considered quite the feminist novel, but today, feminists, they're not taking too kindly to the book, which we'll just...
Take kindly to anything these days, actually.
But at the time the book came out, it was a big seller for him, so much that before John Updike died in 2008, he died in 2009. In 2008, he wrote a sequel called The Widows of Eastwick, which basically took the witches and gave them an update of where they were 30 years from the previous novel. Now, the book is set in the 1960s. The Vietnam War is much in rage at the moment, and what we have is a small town that seems to be enthralled with women's way of women and women's sexuality. At the time, I said before, the critics really loved the book, but now there seems to be another critical stance on the book. So, Vicki, what are your thoughts about The Witches of Eastwick, the book?
The book. Well, Updike, he's always been a hard read for me. I get a little ADHD where he kind of, throws things out there and kind of takes you off course of the main idea that he was steering towards. And he kind of, I don't know, I have a hard time reading him. But when it got towards the end and everything started tying in together, then I really started enjoying it. I liked it. I mean, I liked the women were kind of really out there, and I think about it. I mean, if I had to hear one more story about, the gray hairy nutsack story. I mean, why did just the way he just describes certain things? That's why I was texting you. Go, why is he talking about this? Like, I never read the book. I watched the movie. But
And what about yourself, Barbara? What do you feel about the novel The Witches of Eastwick?
Well, I like to be a positive person, but as a writer, I'm a minimalist. I like broad strokes. I feel like an arched eyebrow tells you tons. And then this guy describes things forever. I mean, it's like fabric on the couch, and he describes the hair on someone's knuckles. And so I like to read the snarky reviews on Amazon. And someone wrote, was he being paid by the word? He was pages and pages of description. And then the other snarky review that I liked, it said, this book makes me wonder if John Updike has ever met a woman.
Yeah, I read that one.
He's a good writer, but he's a little too enthralled with his own writing because he likes to go on and on and on and on. And these characters, we're not at the movie yet, but the difference for me, the movie was fun. The book was not fun. The book
was dark.
But the people were just unlikable, and not in a House of Cards way.
Right.
Not an interesting, unlikable way. Just unlikable.
It was a hard read.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the important thing to realize is that when John Updike wrote this, he basically wrote it because he wanted to make things right with what shall we call, feminist detractors, is what he said about writing the book of Witches of Eastwick.
Yeah.
A thing I found about the Witches of Eastwick, I really quite liked it, actually. Once I got into it, it took me a good, 22% of the way through the book until finally everything started clicking in place. What I did like about it is that I found personally, I don't know, I can't really talk from a feminist point of view because, as you know, I'm not a female, first of all, but I thought it was quite strong on the whole feminism type of thing because, you had three women who were all divorced, and then what you also had basically is women who owned their sexuality. They owned themselves, and I found that was quite interesting because they weren't really, the only time that they ever were enthralled or the product of any man is when Van Horne came to town. But before that, they were quite into their being, into their own womanness.
Right.
And
yeah, I guess that's true. That's true. But they were very selfish and mean people.
They were awful mothers too. They're
terrible mothers.
Horrible mothers.
Well, what I found with the novel, which I found quite interesting, is that before they conjure up Van Horne till he comes to town, the women are quite settled. The thing is, they're not bad mothers at the point. And another thing that I found that was quite interesting is that, Alexandra, who had her crafts, and she's doing very, very well with her crafts sort of thing and selling them. They're making her a little bit of pocket money. She's very good with growing things. And, of course, she's had endless canning of spaghetti sauces. And you had Suki, who was doing quite well in the newspaper. And then you also had
Jane.
Sorry, I keep wanting to call her Sandra Good for some reason, because of the whole witch thing. And then you had Jane, who was, quite happy living her life. And it seems like once Van Horne entered into their lives, then everything started decaying for them. And it almost became like you had three strong, independent women, and all of a sudden you have a man. And it came across like a Jerry Springer episode, where basically you'll have like a doctor, a lawyer, and then you'll have someone who owns their own company, and then you'll have this man who doesn't have any teeth, never bathed a day in his life, and never worked, and they're fighting over him.
Right.
And it's kind of this weird thing that women have with each other. It's like they're fine, but as soon as you enter a man into the frame, they kind of all turn against each other to a weird extent.
And that's what us women find offensive.
What I liked about, one thing in the book that I liked about, because we all know how much I love my ex-husband, is they feel justified by anger and righteous and revenge and whatnot. But I got a kick out of it when Alexandra reduced her husband to she put him in a jar and kept the screw on tight, and then he became just mere dirt. And then Jane sprinkles her ex-husband on food for seasoning, and Suki permanized hers in a plastic placemat. So that can give you what they thought of men right there. So they were kind of, experiencing similar transformations in their independence.
Well, I mean, the interesting thing is also you got the Felicia character, who's like the moral good in this town, and she's the one that's all of a sudden starts seeing the dirtiness and the nastiness of what's actually happening with Van Horne. Now, the problem I found with the novel is that when you first hear about Felicia, she seems to be okay. She's kind of a do-gooder, kind of one of those born-again Christian types that tells people what their moral compass should be for everyone. But at the same time, she doesn't seem to be going off any kind of rails. But once Van Horne enters into the town, all of a sudden, things start happening. And not good things, actually. I mean, you have, the priest or the Baptist minister, or the Unitarian minister, I should say. Sorry, he's Unitarian. And basically, he leaves his wife and gets bombed doing this, terrorist action. Well,
blows himself up.
And at that time, the women's powers is also like, the women, the three witches would actually sleep with married men. And with the married men, what they would actually have is that they would help their lives. They would kind of enrich the men's lives. But once Van Horne happened, all of a sudden, every man that they were sleeping with, all of a sudden, were becoming decaying.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting. But then you have the Van Horne character, which is an interesting character in himself because, you got someone who's very egotistical, but at the same time, you got these you got these three strong women, and they're kind of like entranced by him. And it's almost like, I think it's because he could see into their souls, or they didn't have any secrets with him. And maybe with everyone else, they had secrets.
Right.
I mean, another interesting thing I also found is that the women are very much in tune with their powers that they have.
Right.
Which
they said themselves they were under a spell that was greater than themselves. So,
but I found another odd thing about the whole book also is that Alexandra, everything's pretty much told from Alexandra's point of view, really. You don't really get a lot of Jane or Suki. You get little glimpses into them, but everything's Alexandra. She seems to be the main protagonist throughout the whole book. Yeah. So, what did you feel about it, Vicky?
And regarding to
some of the plot points and stuff in the first half of the Witches of Eastwick.
The first half, well, it was all setting up everything. The beginning of the book was just setting up what was to happen, really leading up to the climatic third portion of the book. It takes a while for him to get going, and things don't really start clicking, moving along till Van Horne shows up at the concert where Jane's playing, and I believe he brings her flowers and whatnot, and but it takes a while to set up. Like I said, it was kind of Updike's always been kind of a hard read for me. Like Barbara was saying, he described so much that my ADHD brain had to keep going back and reading and making sure that I had the point of the story because I didn't want to miss it because he is setting up the story in the beginning of the part named The Coven to get everything that's going to happen in the second and third installments of the book. But it does show in the beginning. I enjoy the fact that they were showing some female empowerment. They were kind of, it seemed like though the women were misogynistic as much as the men. So it was really on both sides. So there wasn't really any innocent parties in any of this book, really. I mean, everybody had a sin of some sort.
I found it quite interesting that once you pass the first half of the book, and then after you get Van Horne, he's pretty much made himself established in the community. Then I found it quite interesting that how the story actually turns as well. That you get, once Felicia's kids come to town, and what the witches do to her is based on pure jealousy,
Yeah.
And they actually gave her, she actually ends up having, I forget what her name is actually, it's off the top of my tongue, but the daughter who ends up getting married to Van Horne in the last half of the book.
Right.
Jennifer, was it?
She ends up...
Her name is Jenny.
Jenny, yeah.
What happens to Jenny is almost quite horrible because she gets inflicted with the same thing that all through the book, Alexander's basically in fear of cancer. And so everything's about, I'm going to get cancer. Everything's going to lead to cancer. Every time she gets a pain, there's a cancer. And then they put this curse, whether it's a curse or not, onto Jenny. And she dies very horrifically. But at the same time, Jenny is like the ultimate good. She's kind of the Anne Frank character where she's good in everybody, even when horrible things are happening around her. which
You know, the stuff through the book, though, they don't even really, it's called guilt, but they don't even have guilt. Oh, the poor thing.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like they didn't do anything to reverse the hex or whatnot, whatever kind of negative spin they put on her life. But it's always, oh, the poor girl, you know, the poor thing. How much is she suffering today? Well, she looks terrible today. You know, it's just, it really does not show women in their best light. Let's put it that way.
What about yourself, Barbara? What are your thoughts over?
Well, two things. One is, you know, there's no one really to root for. You know, there's nobody like, oh, I hope this person gets what they want. I mean, the whole thing is the point of the book is what do the characters want, and then putting obstacles in their way until they get it. And the takeaway, I mean, what is Updike's message? Like, they're independent without a man, then they get a man, and he messes everything up. But they're only happy when they come up with a man at the end. So is that his takeaway for this whole thing? That women are only going to be happy when they're, you know, have the right man. I mean, I don't know. I know what I see that he was trying to be. I guess we're looking at it through we're time traveling here. So many years later, and the style of writing has changed, and the themes have changed, and women are viewed differently now. But especially by ourselves. But I don't know. I think he was trying real hard to please the women, but with this book, but he didn't make anyone very nice. He didn't make anyone very admirable, except for the poor Jenny there. And at the end of it, you know, you're like, okay, so what does that book leave me with? And it's just leaves me with, they're not going to be happy unless they have a man.
Well, you know, most Alexandra did say, you know, which she did specify a couple times, you know, we don't really need men. Men aren't the answer. Isn't that we've decided? You know, and then they go, well, why are we always talking about them? You know, so clearly, you know, men were on the menu for them. I mean, like they were always having affairs, but it did seem like they were sharing Daryl to some capacity peacefully. And then something happened, you know, at one of their tennis matches. Tennis seemed to be a thing throughout this whole book. They're always playing tennis. You know, tennis was the big deal with whatever their stage was set on. You know, there was the tennis court or the big orgified bathtub.
Yeah.
I mean, I found that the women pretty much had the three traits of stereotypical women. You had Alexandra, who was the strong motherly type with, you know, her childbearing hip bones and stuff like this. And then
that'll get you in trouble.
Well, you know, but I'm saying, we're going from a John Updike point of view here. I'm not going from my own personal point of view here. And then you had Suki, who's pretty with a monkey face. No, we're not talking about Roseanne Barr monkey face. We're talking about she had a monkey face. Okay. And then she had, you know, but yet she's, you know, everyone likes her. She's the, you know, the popular girl, the one that everyone's going to. And then we have the bitchy negative woman, which is Jane. And it seemed like, I think that's probably where Updike kind of went a bit wrong, where he found three stereotypes. He dressed it in those three stereotypes, and he gave them those personalities of those three stereotypes. Yeah. And even when after Jenny gets the curse put on her, it's only Alexandra, the motherly type, who actually has any second cause of thought, or well, maybe we should reduce this, or maybe something like this. And it's almost like, you have this weird trio relationship here, and I guess this is what happens with, you know, two's companies, but three's a crowd, and it seems like three was a crowd with these witches, because as far as Jane is concerned, Suki likes Jane, and then Alexandra likes Jane, but Suki and Alexandra are the closer of the two, and they kind of have underlying
lesbian love going on there.
Well, I think also is because Jane, if you notice, everything that comes out of Jane's mouth is very bitter. She's a very bitter woman. There's never a kind word that comes out of her mouth at all.
No.
Or even in the way of doing. And if you look at the curse on Jenny, it's actually Jane that starts the whole thing rolling.
Yeah, and she doesn't want to undo it, and she doesn't have any guilt at all about it. She never remembers. So, yeah, she is the mean one, definitely out of the group. But they're all
I would say meanest.
What's that?
I would say the meanest.
She was the meanest, absolutely.
But I had a discussion with some coworkers not too long ago. I'm fortunate or unfortunate, depending on your point of view, to work in the fine art industry, and I work in an office full of, I'll say, we'll call them women. I like to refer to them as girls sometimes because of the difference in the age, but they're all in their mid to late 20s, art students, and we had a nice little roundtable discussion about this book, me and a few of them, and they seem to think that as far as feminism is concerned, that this book is no longer relevant in the way that things are viewed. And they're from big cities. They're from Dallas, and like Vicky and I live in a smaller town right now in Texas. And if you were to walk out to the Saturday morning soccer fields right now and find three women huddled up together drinking their Starbucks and lay a pen and a paper between them, you slap a cover on it, and you would still have this book today. I think it has a lot to do with small town mentality. Yeah, compared to let's say people from a larger city, people that are more involved with politics and current events and things like that. It relates still to me as living in a smaller town. Because it was Rhode Island, wasn't it?
Right. That's very interesting. Yeah, I've never lived in a small town, so maybe that's what I'm missing.
Well, I come from a very small town of 1,800 people, a place called Sackett's Harbor, New York, and everyone knows everyone else's business, and it's one of those places that if you did anything wrong when you were a child, your mom knew before you even got home.
And it follows you into your 50s.
Yeah. Yes, they don't forget.
Well, I mean, I do find that with the small townness, I mean, that small townness is kind of going away to a certain extent with the modern world due to, I mean, like if I go back home to Sackett's, none of the old families are there anymore. I mean, these families pretty much populated this town for 200 years, and all these small town families have moved away now. And so some of the small townness is actually going because people are going where the jobs are.
Right.
And, that kind of thing. But I think that The Witches of Eastwick is a product of its time. In 1984, I mean, I think maybe John Updike tried to save himself by setting it in the 60s.
Yeah, there you go.
But I think that at the same time, I mean, we got to remember that feminism was on the rise in the 60s. In the 80s, women kind of were like kind of settled. They weren't. It's kind of like the fight plateaued out for a while until recently. But I mean, it plateaued out for a good 30 years. I mean, you had a lot of things in the from the 60s and 70s that, shows like the Mary Tyler Moore Show and things like that were moving feminism forward. And then 80s, everything stood still. Then I think music video probably kind of killed feminism with the way that sexuality and women basically kind of killed feminism for a while. Women became objects. And now we're spinning back around where feminism's having another upsurge in our society at the moment.
That's what you want to call it.
And I do think that, but I do think that, with John Updike setting it in the 60s, writing it in 84, I think it was kind of like looking back. So therefore he could save himself some of the critique about what actually feminism was about, because by that time, I think society has a way of forgetting. After 20 years, society forgets what happened 20 years beforehand or what life really was like.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably where he did. I mean, I did find it quite interesting that Daryl ends up being gay and running off with Jenny's brother at the end. Now that was
well, he did set up the women, kind of, don't you think?
Mm. Well, I think when we get into the film, which is which we'll be discussing after the commercial break. I mean, the film is a different sort of animal than the book.
Completely.
The film they took just a tad of each little thing in the book and really
loosely based.
What did you say?
Loosely based film.
Very loosely based. That's what I'm trying to say. It's very loosely based, and thank God.
Yeah, just a little bit. I think I'm just a description of male genitalia kind of put me off of lunch for like, it's like, stop with the gray hairy stuff.
I know.
But I do think, you got to remember, like in 84 when this book was written, I mean, it is coming off the back of Erica Jong's Fair Flying, which actually had like strong sexuality and a lot of strong sexual scenes with a woman owning her sexuality. And I think that the reason why there's a lot of that in here, I think that Erica Jong was one of those forerunners and the feminism writers of the late 70s. And I think that he probably kind of read Fear of Flying and thought this is what a feminist writer should be writing about. And I think that's
well, he had another clue coming. Let me tell you.
Yeah, he
doesn't get a clue what women are thinking about. That's probably what I need to say. John Updike does not got nothing on women in this book.
That's exactly what I'm saying, Vicky. I am with your sister.
Got nothing. I mean, it's just like I was sitting here reading this. I was like, "What rubbish is this?"
Right.
I mean, who did he interview? The basis of his intellectual mentality and attacking, witchcraft and feminism all in the same sentence. By the way, I mean that's just getting him in more trouble.
I know. That's why I really liked that snarky review that said this book makes me wonder if John Updike has ever met a woman.
Well, yeah, you have those two. You have those two different kinds of authors. You have those that write for themselves and hope that they find an audience, and then you have those that write for their audience. And he was clearly he thought he was writing for his audience, but no, redo.
But I think that if you look at John Updike's works before this, and his Rabbit series, I mean, you deal with a man who had trouble committing and basically used women as objects. And then when anything went wrong, it's like it was always the woman's fault, or it's because he chose this woman. And I guess it does bleed into Witches of Eastwick because, I mean, his women characters never been strong. His male characters, I guess the only thing you say about Witch is that the women characters are a bit more strongly written, but not more realistically written.
They're not characters. They're just cutouts, kind of.
They're like shadows of women that may or may possibly not. I mean, I guess that's what I was trying to say. I guess it took a little bit of conversation to get out what I really thought, because I mean, it almost seems like he was really, trying to superimpose the Scarlet Letter on three feminist witches, basically, because he didn't really make them look good. I mean, not everybody sleeps with everybody, or feels empowered by sleeping with somebody's husband.
Well,
I mean, I
have to beg to differ there. I think when you get to a small town, I think everyone's up to sleeping with everyone else.
Have you seen some of the guys in my town?
Yeah, but you no longer.
I'm backing out of this one. I'm covering up the camera.
But I mean, you no longer live in Watertown. But I mean, if you trace back the people that who are still living there, they're all pretty much incestuous as part about I mean, it's almost like they're making their way through different people's families, the people still living there. And I think that when you have a small town and the jackpot is a bit very limited about who you can have sexual encounters with, I think that you do find yourself sleeping with people and their relatives, and then if you do that, I remember this, I remember when AIDS first came out in 1989, sort of. Right. 1989, when they started making people more and more aware of it. Came out in the early 80s, but 89 is back when they said that everyone that you sleep with, you slept with everyone they slept with for 7 years, and everyone they slept with for 7 years. I mean, in the town, you sleep with one person, you pretty much slept with the whole town. I mean, it's pretty much like that, but it's a kind of scenario, which is kind of sickening. Creepy. But I mean, Updike, I mean, he is misogynistic in his depictions of women and sexual relationships. I mean, his sexual relationships, I mean, he might have been I don't know much about John Updike's upbringing, but he might have been one of those guys who never got laid. And this is his idea of what, having sexual relationships were. I mean, it just seems like his sexual relationships in the book are very schoolboy depictions.
Exactly. Well, he went to a Unitarian church. And he used to be in the choir, if that gives you any idea what was going on.
Well, I think that setting the main church in Eastwick as a Unitarian church, I think it gives him a bit more freedom, and it actually was able for him to, I'd say that if you had a Catholic church or a strong Protestant
you're
church,
limited.
I think that basically what you would have had is something a bit more deeper. But I think by setting a Unitarian church in there, I think it's that way there won't be any outside influences or religious putting their moral compass into.
I know here in Dallas, Chad probably knows that the Unitarian church down here, anybody can go. I mean, they have big pagan gatherings and stuff. So, I mean, it's Unitarian is pretty much, encompasses all.
Can you imagine who he didn't want to offend? I mean, the backlash he would have gotten if it was the Catholic Church or I think he was trying to stay away from that particular beehive. I don't know.
Yeah, the time in which the novel was written, it wasn't common everyday occurrence for people to, I guess, offend specific religious organizations, but the time frame in which it was set in the 60s, you sure didn't do that. They would drag you away from your writing desk kicking and screaming. So,
well, he was also writing from an angle like back in the late 60s, early 70s, women were starting to equivocate themselves, not only feminism, but they were coming into paganism and Wiccanism and traditional witchcraft, and they were starting to align themselves with that and leaving the church in droves and going towards a more heathenistic lifestyle too. And so I mean he was treading on a little bit of scary water there with that. He was in Dallas anyway.
I mean, but as far as this witches theme, I also found it a bit bizarre that you have the three main women, and then they're witches because of why they're divorced, they're all divorced, and then the deaths came after the divorces happened. Yeah. But then it seemed like the women left in town whose husbands had left them also became witches, and so they started their own coven as well, which was quite interesting. So it's almost like his idea of a witch is that the only way a woman can become a witch is that A, she cannot be married, and second of all, she needs to be left by a man. So therefore, instead of her becoming an independent thinking woman, she needed to turn to the dark arts in order to become a whole woman.
Yeah, that's really misleading. So
yeah, that's not going to win him any points with the girls.
No, or any groups of wayward women, 3 or more equals a coven. So
yeah.
No,
I mean
not quite.
I mean, Witches of Eastwick was basically the book is probably. At the time in 1984, Witches of Eastwick probably was a good title, but I guess if you were to retitle the book, it'd probably be called Bitches of Eastwick.
Basically, yes.
Because all the women are just horrible. I mean, every single
horrible.
It's a very dark novel. It's very dark, unlike the film, which we'll get into. It's more light. They were horrible mothers. I don't even know if it was so much. It was like before, what's his name again? I just had a Van Horne. Van Horne gets there. But I thought they were already on their way to being bad mothers anyway. Once they didn't seem to. Well, Suki always goes out and eats. She doesn't want to come home and cook dinner, and Jane doesn't really have much interest in it either. They just, would you go check on my kids? They don't even bother with their children, and it just gets worse when he comes down the pike. And they just all maternal reasoning just goes out the window when he gets involved.
Do you think that was Updike basically? I know that when people get involved in a relationship, they tend to let everyone else to side.
A little bit, yes.
And I know that, and I don't mean to stereotype women per se, but I know I have a lot of female friends is that they're really good friends when they're single, but as soon as they get in a relationship, you never hear from them until the honeymoon period's over with, and all of a sudden they do enter your life again.
Right.
But normally the stranger that they've had a relationship with the last 3 months in line with them because they can't do anything on their own with them anymore, which is fine by me. And it's not a criticism, but I find that it's quite. No,
there's a lot of truth to that. I've lost lots of girlfriends when they start dating somebody else, or I've done it before. It's like, that person is all that you focus on. And then you totally let everybody around you just, drift away. And then you realize it's just like, oh shit, man, I better call up the friends and see how everybody's doing because you really do get lost in it. So yeah, you're right on that.
I've done that a lot of times as a man though, in retrospect. I've had a lot of times in recent sobriety to reflect on my life and what I've done and where I've came from. And my friends have brought this up to me too. I have always done that. Every time I would get into a relationship, I would completely neglect the people I grew up around or friends, and I don't know why, but I guess that says a lot about me. So
a normal. I mean, that's a normal thing, especially when you first start a relationship. to devote all your time to it.
Yeah, it's new and everything else. But these three women are sharing this guy. And you know what? I might ever share somebody like that and blow off all my other friends when there's a 3-4-way relationship going on, because it's not that new. And it's as a woman, that's what I'm saying. These women are all settling like, they can't get their own man. You know what I'm saying? You're a girl here. Help me out.
This were a TV show. If this were a TV show, it would be Sister Wives.
Yes, exactly.
I think it was quite interesting. I wonder if this book was actually written by a female. I wonder what kind of relationship. I wonder what kind of how everything would change within the story frame of the way it's written.
Everything would change.
Everything, yes, exactly. It would all change. This is not the context of seriously. The more we're getting into the discussion, the more I'm starting to realize I don't really think Updike knew anything about women. I don't think he researched anything about relationships and women. I mean, he did a little bit of a witchcraft, you could tell he looked up stuff like that because he's had this basic hex thing going on.
Yeah.
You got to do that. But, I mean, as far as relationship stuff, I'm trying to figure out where he got his research from.
He missed the mark. He missed the mark.
He didn't get it from a McKinsey report, that's for sure.
No.
I'd be interested to know more about his mother.
Right.
Yeah, no
daughters or sisters. Did he have any sisters? He could have talked to them.
No kidding.
Well, I'm kind of wondering if this is basically because he's pre-World War II child. That's what he is. He's born in 1932, and maybe he's and if you look at the 30s and 40s as far as the women's roles are concerned. It's only up until World War II that women actually started getting a career, and then the men took that career off them. So I'm kind of wondering if that's where he stayed. In his formative years, he pretty much stayed at 1940 and his views on women, but never actually exchanged it. Because maybe, by the 1960s, when he says this in the 60s, by that, and he's written by the 1984, by the 60s, he's pretty much a well-published author by that point. So it's like he's probably not even in touch with real life anymore. Because, you got to remember, John Updike was up here. Was up on the scale. He's a Pulitzer Prize winner by the 60s are concerned. And he probably wasn't in tune with regular people by that point in time. So maybe that's what clouded his situation.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'd like to know what kind of book he would have written if he hated women.
No kidding. Yeah, seriously. Because, it was okay to make, I guess, I don't know, he wanted to write a dark, bleak novel that involved women. But, I can see where he's probably catching hell for it now because everybody gets offended now, let's face it. Everybody's offended about something. And so I could see them taking this and just tearing this apart. Not only does he make women look needy, and cruel,
And don't forget bitchy.
And bitchy. Well, they are cruel and bitchy. I could be the first one to attest to that. Women are a detriment to each other instead of raising up most of the time. But, he did write a dark novel. It's not meant to be, happy-go-lucky Rebecca Sunnybrook Farm. I think he wanted it dark and hideous, and it takes him a while. His narrative is just so hard though to get around because it takes forever. It took 3 pages for Alexandra to wade across a tidal inlet. Remember, just to describe her underwear. It took forever just to get through that one scene.
Well, when they're pouring a drink, he's got to describe the label on the gin bottle. It's like, come on already. We've all seen a gin.
I've seen more gin bottles than your average person, so I don't need to read the bottle. Just show me where the glass is.
It's filler. I do that. I do that in rewrites. I'm like, I need to add some link to this novel. What am I going to do? I'll pick a subject somewhere along the way and just describe it until I'm sick of typing. Maybe that was it. I don't.
You leave that part in at the end.
Hey, Stephen King does that as well now. Tell us all about the chair, Steve. he'll do the same thing. He'll tell us the name of the guy who built the rocking chair in 1937.
That's like The Stand. That I love that book, but oh my God, is it painful to get through the first half of that book.
Well, when you have a page count, I guess. Even Sue Grafton wrote, I took a shower and shampooed my hair. And I'm thinking, is this relevant? Do I need to know you shampooed your hair?
What kind of shampoo did you use?
Yeah. What are the ingredients in the shampoo?
Was it tepid water or was it hot water?
Yeah. Did you lather, rinse, repeat, or just go one time?
That's when you have to. You're meeting a word count.
The interesting thing about John Updike, what I'm finding in my notes here, is that he was an only child. His mom was wanting to be a writer, but she wasn't very successful. He was married twice, got divorced in 1974 after having 4 children, and then remarried in 1977, where he stayed married to her to his death. So, but he doesn't give a lot of personality or a lot of information about his private life.
There wasn't a whole lot on his private life. All I found was that he was a Unitarian and that he was in the choir.
Yeah.
Other than that, there wasn't a whole lot of, I guess maybe the guy was maybe a closet case. Who knows?
Well, he had a face for radio. I can tell you that. So.
Did the wife never proofread for him? I mean, I used to hand my stuff over to the wife and just, she would look up from the page every now and then and just kind of just shake her head slightly like, no, Chad, no, okay, I'll redo it.
Well, there's a Stephen King story in his book on writing. He was not succeeding. He was getting like little things published. And then he started writing Carrie and he threw it in the trash and his wife took it out and said, this is
right.
And he said, I don't know anything about high school girls. And he said, I can help you with that. So that became his first hit and got him out of poverty and out of, but we didn't have a telephone at that point, one in the hallway. But, you should bounce it off of somebody. I mean, if I were trying to write inner thoughts of a man, I don't think I'd just guess.
I do think that with John Updike, I don't really think he mixed with the common man anyway. I mean, if you look at his writing career, he started writing for the New Yorker magazine.
Oh.
Yeah.
And
how many times do I pull out a copy of the New Yorker in my house?
Well, it's a bit like Truman Capote. Like if you read a Truman Capote book, I mean, it's outside of In Cold Blood. I mean, most of his stories you have a hard time resonating or becoming attuned to his characters because I think that he's quite removed from life.
Yeah. And the New Yorker too. They do love to hear the sound of their own words. I mean, more words is better, and make it more layered and complex and longer. But to me, I don't know. I just I'm much more into. I like shipping news. It's all telegraphic. That's the kind of writing I like.
As modern day writers, we have instantaneous gratification, really, though, with the internet. When we write things, we reach out to beta readers immediately on social media and email, and within a couple of weeks, you have feedback. Just doing this in the 80s and before even, where you're doing it all by mail. I couldn't imagine that at all. I think that might have something to do with it as well.
Right. You really do get feedback. And I'm lucky that I've had many good reviews, but when I get a bad review, I read it because I want to find out, why did this not resonate with this person? Are they giving me some criticism that's valid that I should take on, into account? I mean, if someone doesn't think I'm funny, I can't help with that.
I had a review not too long ago with A Taste of Home where I've gotten several just amazing reviews from it, but I got one not too long ago from a viewer reviews for a living that says it may be the worst book he's ever read in his entire career as a reviewer, and it makes him want to quit. Now I consider that that's a success to me. That's if I changed your life that much, then I have done my job, sir.
You want to change careers because
there's always one.
Yeah, well, he was the one.
That's hilarious.
I mean, the only problem with some reviews though is, I mean, sometimes I'll look at a book review and it's I'll go through and it's okay, what do I want to read? And I give me books to read and stuff like this, and I'll go through the critiques of them, and then you read a really bad review 1 star, and you look at the 1 star review, it's the cover was tore. It's okay.
the best review, the best bad review I ever read, which thank God was not of my book, but I read this review. It said, "This book owes me 8 hours of my life, and I'm writing a review to save you."
Must have been Keith that reviewed it. That sounds like
very good.
Right.
I'm very good in my book reviews. I try never to find anything, even if it's a book I hate and I have difficulty getting through, I'll still read it to the very end, and I'll always find something nice to say about it.
Should I be reading between the lines about that review you wrote for me?
Actually, I really enjoyed your book. Actually, I really got into it. It's like, because I am so far behind. I got like 25 books I have to review at the moment, so it's like sort of thing. But
that's one of the things I do for for some of the local newspapers is I have my own book review column, and I'm catering to Texas authors only. Just local. First of all, really local gets top priority, and then after that, Texas. I haven't gone beyond Texas because for a lot of the indie authors, which the majority of authors today are indie authors, they don't have a lot of support out there, especially the printed review where it's going to get around something that people can cut out and frame and feel good about. I don't care how bad it was, I always try to emphasize the positive in it. Because let's face it, there's enough negativity and hate in the world as it is without me contributing.
Right. Now, if I don't like a book, I won't write a review. I don't want to bring them down. But if I can't find anything nice to say, I just won't. I won't.
Yeah, and that's been me too. If I can't find anything at all nice to say, I just won't bother with the review.
Yeah.
No, I'll write a bad-ish review, but what I'll do is, first of all, you can always tell it's going to be a bad review for me because I'll read I'll write something to the simple fact that even though I did not like this book personally, this is what I like. That's what I thought was good about it, whether it was characterization or something like this. And then I'll put down what I didn't like about the plotting, and then I'll put what I didn't like. But I always make sure I say from my point of view. It doesn't necessarily mean that maybe, there's a lot of things I don't like that a lot of people like. The movie Gladiator. I try to watch it on a year to 2 yearly basis because everyone talks about how great this movie is, and I fucking hate it. I watch it and I still don't get it. Like
Gladiator?
Yeah.
Crow? I love that movie.
Yeah, there's a lot of films that, and so there's a lot of books. I know that's from a personal taste. And sometimes if I find a book and I just say that I didn't like it, and that's the thing I say that a lot of people liked it. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll put it to the side and then go back to read it, see if maybe it's my mood or something like that. And I'll do that with films as well. Yeah. Because sometimes it's like, sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't, but it's just a personal thing. But I don't think it's good to slaughter someone over the simple fact that you didn't like it.
No, but you're a person because I don't know, the older I get, the less patience I have. I used to give a book 30 pages. Now I give it 10. It's like, if you don't have me in 10, I'm out of here. I've walked out of movies. I'm just like, I'm getting any younger, and I'm not wasting my time.
I totally agree with you.
But as an artist, it's hard enough to put yourself out there for the whole world to pick apart as it is. It's kind of like a museum. You walk through a museum exhibit, and you don't like what you're seeing, you move on to the next scene, or the next painting or sculpture. You don't sit there and stare at it for 30 more minutes just to figure out what it is you didn't like about it. Just move on.
Just keep moving. Keep moving.
So, though I do have difficulty with one thing I did have difficulty with, Witches of Eastwick, is the paragraphs went on forever. Some of the paragraphs are like 3 or 4 pages long, and you're like, oh my God, like do a paragraph break, something.
Right. No, it was tedious. It was, because like you'd read 3 pages and go, has anything happened?
No, nothing. It's sort of like I said, the title thing. When all he was trying to do was get to the point where he describes her milk white thighs and her underwear. It took 3 pages just to get her to the car, to get her dog when the tide came in.
I know.
Get the fucking dog and come back. Do it in one page. You don't need that many pages.
He was trying to hook those readers that go, okay, just one more paragraph before bedtime.
Yeah, and you keep going, is something going to happen? Is something ever going to happen?
I know, it's just like, then I'd go back, because I go, okay, I must have missed something. And then I go back, and it's like 3 and 4 pages of, just describing, like you said, like a bottle. And I thought I'd missed something. And I go, okay, well, I'm not going back 5 more pages on my Kindle to figure out what I missed. I'm just not going to do it.
If you go back in time when authors were writing before we had TV, before we had, when this was the entertainment, was to read a book.
True.
Then people didn't have an insight into what it looked like in London or what it was like on the beach.
Good point.
So then they would describe it, but I'm not giving John Updike that credit because that's not when he was writing. But I'm saying when people were writing before the world was so connected, and that's like National Geographic is a popular magazine. People had never been to those places,
right?
But we are not in that style of writing anymore. We're especially now, people want instant gratification. They want to read it. They want to get it. And we don't want to meander around, but he meanders more than anybody meanders, even for that time period.
Chaucer has Canterbury Tales has my attention more than that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is the second time I've actually read this book. The first time I read the book, I read it in the 90s, and I reread it now for the podcast. And I think it was. No, I take that back. I think it's about 2007 because I read the book in 2007. Then I read the sequel, The Witches of Eastwick,
right,
which was quite interesting because you had to kind of like I knew that you couldn't like base the movie and read the sequel, the book, which we'll get into later. But I don't mind. I didn't actually mind that too much because I'm a huge John Irving fan. I'll read anything that John Irving does. I mean, Yeah, well, John Irving takes a long time to get into his books, and he has a lot of description, a lot of text and stuff like this. And so I think because of my love for John Irving, I think that's probably why I didn't bother me that much in this book, though John Irving does it better because at least his character, because John Irving's character is very quirky. There's something very.
I love John Irving. I agree. I love John Irving, but I also like his characters. They're interesting characters.
Precisely.
And people were just two-dimensional. They were not nice.
There wasn't a lot of substance to the characters. There wasn't. There really was no substance to any of the characters.
Exactly. Nobody was a real person or was
except the Jenny. The one person who got screwed the most. The whole book. So.
Yeah, that's true.
So as we before we go into the film, so what are your final thoughts of the book, The Witches of Eastwick, Barbara?
I don't think I'll be reading it again, but it was an interesting idea. It was an interesting idea. And I think I appreciate it more in light of seeing the movie, because the movie, of course, not there, but the movie was fun, and I see the roots of it in the book. But if I just read the book, I might be like, why did I read that book?
And what about yourself, Vicky? What are your final thoughts of the book?
I'm kind of with Barbara, but if he released this book today, as they're confirming Kavanaugh, he would probably get shot out of the streets if they released this book today. He just does. Women aren't going to take that kind of, misogynistic, whatever, view coming from a male and have it superimposed in literature for all the world to see. I mean, he really would get in trouble right now. I think it would not equivocate well into this particular century. But like you said, back in the day, the people probably did need more, adjective and explaining with their literature, because we didn't have the internet. We didn't have 13, 20 channels and whatnot. I don't think I'd want to revisit the book. I'm half tempted to read the sequel, just because he said it was interesting. I would like to see what may happen to these women, so that might be an option.
Personally, I like the book. It's not one of my favorites. I'm glad to reread it for the podcast. I probably won't need to reread it again, probably for another 40 years, and by that time I'll be dead. So
we're gonna bury you with it.
You want someone to read it at your funeral?
Flip it into your casket.
Yeah. We'll put it right in there with Catcher in the Rye.
Yes. But I mean, overall, I enjoyed the book, but I think the reason why I enjoyed it, because out of all the characters, I did like the character of Alexandra. She's the only character I actually liked in the book.
Exactly. I agree with that.
And I found her quite interesting. And if she was missing out of the book, I probably would hate the book immensely. But because of her character, now I don't know, it's because I let the film bleed into the book. Maybe that's the reason why. But I like the Alexandra character. I like her personality, but everyone else I could pretty much done without. So
it's kind of hard not envisioning Jack Nicholson throughout the whole book. I mean, it really screwed it up. You watch the movie before you read the book. Maybe, like you said, that is a problem, because I just kept seeing Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
Then you get the Jack Nicholson characters mixed up, and the next thing you know, he's Torrance from The Shining, and you're like, wait a minute.
True, there were some shadows of that in the movie. Some of the craziness.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to cut to a commercial break, and then we're going to have the film trailer, and then we'll be right back with The Witches of Eastwick, the film, which was directed by George Miller. Please stay tuned.
Amazon is here to make your life easier. By just the tap of a button, you can turn the camera on your phone to your own personal shopping list. Introducing Flow. Just tap the camera icon under the search bar, and you can find whatever it is you're looking for, right on Amazon. Faster than scanning a barcode and typing the name of your item into the search engine. Besides, searching with words is so 2012. Save time and money. Amazon, where shopping meets effortless.
In the quiet town of Eastwick, where nothing ever changes, 3 beautiful women are about to discover powers they never dreamed they had.
Who should we be looking for?
He should be really handsome.
Nice eyes.
Now, the man of their dreams is here.
Jane, at last we meet.
To stay for a spell.
Who are you?
Just your average, horny little devil.
With the Witches of Eastwick.
We could do things you haven't any idea.
You know what's going on up in that house?
She says she sees the devil here in Eastwick.
If you were the devil, would you come to Eastwick?
Oh, I don't know.
Are you going to seduce me too?
Women, a mistake? Or did he do it to us on purpose?
Jack Nicholson, Cher, Susan Sarandon, Michelle Pfeiffer. The Witches of Eastwick.
Hocus pocus.
Hello?
What's your favorite scary movie?
I have a bunch of favorite movies. I watch them all on Shudder.com for only $4.99 a month.
That's a scary low price.
But if I had to pick a favorite, it'd probably be Scream.
Oh.
Yeah, it's the only streaming service that lets me watch hundreds of horror movies on demand.
I'll be right back.
Hello? Hello? Hello, are you gonna subscribe? Hello?
Go to Shudder.com to subscribe. If you dare.
Welcome back. So now we're going to be discussing The Witches of Eastwick, the 1987 film directed by George Miller. Now, the important thing to remember about George Miller is that George Miller, at this time, was quite known as being the Mad Max director. He directed Mad Max, and he also directed a critic-lovey film called The Picnic at Hanging Rock. But The Witches of Eastwick would be his first major film to actually take his Australian star power and move it to America, which would start a long American career. But now he pretty much makes his films for American audiences, but are now mainly made in Australia. He would later go on to do Babe in the City, and Happy Feet. And, of course, the new Mad Max film with Tom Hardy. He also did that as well. That was his last film. So, Vicky, do you want to give us a synopsis of the film, The Witches of Eastwick?
Yeah. Okay. Alexandra Medford is played by Cher. Jane Spofford is played by Susan Sarandon. And Suki Ridgemont, Michelle Pfeiffer are 3 dissatisfied women living in a picturesque town of Eastwick, Rhode Island. Alex is a sculptor and a single mother of 1 daughter, and Jane is a newly divorced music teacher unable to have children. And Suki has 6 daughters and works as a columnist for the Eastwick World, the local newspaper. The 3 friends have lost their husbands, and they had decided to join, unwittingly form a coven where they have weekly get-togethers and share their fantasies about the ideal men and ideal man, and henceforth that becomes our hero of the story.
Yeah.
So, Chad,
Daryl Van Horne.
So, Chad, what are your thoughts about The Witches of Eastwick, the film?
Well, I first saw this movie when it came out. I was a teenager. I didn't pay a lot of attention to it. because my mother was and is still a very huge fan of Cher. And I've never been much of a fan of hers. So, I caught bits and pieces of it over several viewings with friends or when she would watch it. And I just didn't I didn't care. And then I watched it again later in life. And I'm like, okay, this wasn't a bad movie. Up until that point, now witchcraft movies are very common occurrence. You're talking The Craft, Practical Magic, things like that. Not Hocus Pocus. We won't go into that.
I love Practical Magic. That's my favorite movie. Don't be dissing Practical Magic.
No, I will never diss Practical Magic. Midnight Margaritas. But I watched it again here recently to prepare for the podcast, and in comparison to the book, I think the women came off like less empowered and more victims in the beginning, I guess. Didn't character depth was not really all that much, and Jack Nicholson seemed to take the character from The Shining and just transfer it over to this movie in several seconds. So
Jack Nicholson was perfect for this role, though. I don't care.
He was.
He was just absolutely brilliant. I don't care, but the rest of the movie might have sucked, but his performance was fantastic.
I think it suffered a little bit in a lot of pits of despair that a lot of the 80s movies kind of wallow in. It wouldn't surprise me over the next few years if this is remade.
Yeah.
In a more current sense, but
I agree.
I did enjoy the movie for what it was worth. I enjoyed the characters and how they were played. I think the plot, the story seemed really inconsequential. I think it was a movie that was driven off of characters. And when compared to the novel, it's a lot like my first taste of a film like this was reading the Mike Crichton novel The Lost World, and then getting really excited and going to see the film and realizing that they only used like maybe 3 pages of that novel.
I know. Oh my God, that was disappointing. Don't even get me going on that one. That'll be another podcast.
So this was another one of those where it basically it seemed as though they took the source material, they put an 80s shine on it, and just kind of let the characters do their thing. It was a character-driven movie.
And what about yourself, Barbara? What are your thoughts about The Witches of Eastwick, the film?
Well, I only saw it once, and that was yesterday. And I'm glad I saw it. It was a fun movie. To me, it was the opposite of the book. I did not find the book to be fun in any way. I thought the movie was really fun, and to me, it was just such a delight to see a young Cher and a young Michelle Pfeiffer and a young Susan. And it made me want to go watch Moonlight and Stepmom and The Fabulous Baker Boys, but it didn't make me want to go watch The Shining because I think we had enough of that. But truly, I don't think anyone else could have played that role except Jack Nicholson, and I think he did a fantastic job. And the movie is loosely based on the book, really, in a way.
Very loosely,
and I think that's a good thing. And I think that in the beginning, the women are more like victims, and then of course at the end is when they get their power and realize their strength and how they don't need a man, and they don't need especially this man in their lives, and that they have the power to drive him away after he hurts them in various ways and doesn't let them have any independence at all. He's we're a family, and that's the way we're going to stay, otherwise you're going to suffer. And it was just, I thought it was a good movie, and I did enjoy it, and I love the music of John Williams. What a plus. And I researched it. Not one of those actors, I think, ever had another movie with music by John Williams accompanying it. But I thought the music added to it, and I just enjoy all the actors, and I thought the dialogue was a little bit lame, but again, I'm looking at it through the time span of how movies are done now and how they were written then, but it was a lot. It was, at least they weren't describing the gin bottle.
As far as the music is concerned, I think that John Williams actually plagiarized himself when he did Harry Potter, because the Witches of Eastwick, the music, because I was putting together the opening credits, and it sounds like the Harry Potter theme.
Oh, interesting. I'm gonna have to go check that out.
I'll have to go back and listen to that again. I didn't pick that up.
Yeah, I picked it up. I think it's because after I was like hearing it over like 50 times as I'm like editing it together, and I thought, God, this sounds just like Harry Potter. And then all of a sudden, like Harry Potter came on the BBC over here, and was like, oh my God, it is Harry Potter. So.
Well, and I just saw Jaws recently, which of course again is John Williams. So I mean, he can make or break a movie with that music. I think and it's always.
Cher was offered the role of Jane, but she wanted to play the part of Alexandra, and Susan Sarandon didn't even know that she was playing the part of Jane until she showed up on location.
Oh, that's funny.
Bring that one on her, yeah.
I think I think one of the unsung heroes of this piece actually is Veronica Cartwright, who's actually going to be in the Birds when we cover that end of the month. But Veronica Cartwright, I mean, she is such a genre actress. I mean, Alien, and she's in this, and I mean, she for a part that's been minimalized so much in the film, she really makes it the most memorable parts in the whole film. I saw,
And she was awesome. She's the one who did the most acting. I mean, I feel I'm beginning to think Jack Nicholson is just like that every day.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I think that when they were putting this script together, I mean, the screenplay was by Michael Cristofer, and I think that I'm kind of wondering if he made it because he's like, okay, Jack Nicholson's going to be here, so we're going to write the part detailed towards him. Because it's very Jack Nicholson. I mean, there are a lot of differences between the film. What I thought was quite interesting is the three witches of Alexandra, Jane, and Suki are all divorced in the book. And here, he's given the 3 Ds, death, divorce, and desertion or abandonment, which I thought was quite interesting that they changed that for the film. And I have to say that Cher, I think she outshines everyone in the film, basically. She really did fantastically well in this film.
I think she's a better actress than she is singer, to tell you the truth, as far as performance-wise. I mean, I'm just not a big Cher fan as far as vocals, but I love her as an actress.
So all our gay audience out there, please disregard Vicky's last remark about Cher singing. So,
no, there's nothing wrong with Cher singing. It's the robo Cher years that I can't get with.
Vocoder Cher.
Babe, got you, babe. Maybe when she was the Sonny and Cher. I couldn't handle the 70s. I'm sorry.
Gypsy, Tramps and Thieves, Half Breed.
You would like it, Keith.
Meatloaf, Dead Ringer for Love.
Well, I have a story. My dad's first cousin Lee Miller was the person who produced the Sonny and Cher show.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and what was fun, I mean, so my son went out to LA for a summer and he met Lee and they talked and he gave him some family history. So then my son he lives in New York, so he was watching the Emmys the other day at an Emmys party, because that's what you do in New York. And all of a sudden, In Memoriam comes up and there's Lee Miller's name. And my son is like, what? He was so devastated. Because it was like, you don't ever know anyone on the Emmys, and then to know someone who's in the In Memoriam part, that's pretty
really?
Well, and
I've been to Palm Springs a few times. Does that count? As asking anything?
Sure, that counts. Sure. That's funny. Well, I like Susan Sarandon's transformation in the movie.
Yeah.
I thought, from Mousy to Vamp, she did great with that.
Susan Sarandon is a brilliant actress. She really is. Right from Rocky Horror Picture Show, straight up. I mean, she was just great in that too. When you think about it, the young Susan Sarandon. I mean, she just has a way of bringing out the essence of any character she plays for whatever reason.
Well, the funny thing about Susan Sarandon, to look at her, she's not pretty, but she's very
charisma.
Well, she's very sexual. I mean, there's something very sexual about Susan Sarandon. I mean, if you look at Catherine Zeta-Jones, for instance. Catherine Zeta-Jones is very, very beautiful, and her body's very, very beautiful and everything about it. But there's nothing sexual. There's no sexuality with her whatsoever.
Right.
She's like, it's like falling in love with a Barbie doll. Where Susan Sarandon is like, she's rough around the edges, but she just exudes sex. She's just.
Right. Was she in Bull Durham? Was she in Bull Durham?
Yeah,
Yes.
she was. She was the one that was coaching, whatever, whatever, the pitcher. She would take on a new pitcher or something every year. I love that movie.
Yeah, that was a good one.
I mean, the funny thing about the film also I found was that looking at the film from a 2018 perspective, and you're kind of looking at it, and it's like in the beginning, all their hair looks like 2018, and then it goes to when they like really sexual levels, when it goes to this 80 bushy thing. It's just like,
yeah,
look at this 80s bushy hair.
Because that's how you knew you were doing well in the 80s, was how bushy your hair was.
I swear, everybody. I mean, only biatches used all that Aquanet because I never used that shit.
Oh, come on, Vicky! I've seen high school pictures of you. Your hair was so good.
But that was just my hair. Look at my hair. I got a lot of hair. I don't need Aquanet, dude.
It was all ratted up like a teenage Jezebel. I saw it.
Fuck you.
I mean, there are some major differences in the novel with the book, and another thing is that in the novel, Daryl is more devil-like. He's less of an enabler and more of a selfish, perverse predator, an architect of mayhem. In this one, he's a bit more the fall guy, the person he's pretty much the comedy relief in the film, which is quite interesting. And of course, Jenny and Jenny's younger brother Chris are totally wiped out. There's no mention of them, and another thing is that in the book, the three witches do not become pregnant when Daryl leaves.
No.
But, which would have been quite interesting if they did. But here, I guess.
Rosemary's Baby in there, huh?
Precisely. Well, I mean, these kids, they were quite little demonic little treasures of joy, weren't they?
Well,
I thought they were all cute babies.
It left me thinking, okay, he's gone. They all live in this big, beautiful house now, but we have an artist, we have a teacher, and we have a journalist that now have, total, like 10 kids amongst everybody combined. How are they affording the taxes and the light bill in this
They're
place?
witches. They can just manifest what they need. Don't you know that?
I need more witches in my life. That's what I need.
I mean, I think the film is quite clever with the way that, you get the opening track of the opening theme, and then it kind of brings you into Eastwick, and it kind of gets you really well involved. And the film works at a very, very fast pace, sort of thing. And I like the idea that there are little nods to the books. For instance, with Alexandra making her little bubbies. And then she's like, Daryl tells her she's going to make them bigger. And then there's one scene where she opens.
Big bubby.
And she gets this big bubby behind the door.
Enormous bubby. She's not going to be able to get out through the door.
No. It's like one of those people who become morbidly obese and they have to take down the side of the house to get them out to the hospital.
Oh my God, my 600-pound life.
And I thought it was quite interesting that Michelle Pfeiffer had all these girls as well.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I don't know what – it's quite – when you read the novel and then you look at the film, it's quite odd, the things that they added to it and the things that they took away from it, which is like – but it's almost like two different animals altogether. Outside of the character names, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
She had triplets, and she had 3 other children, and then she had a little boy. So she had 7 children total probably by the end of the movie.
Yeah, by the end, right. Yeah, I'm not sure what the point of that was, but whatever. I mean, it was –
well, she was just fertile, She said she couldn't even drink out of the same cup of coffee with a guy. She brushed her teeth with the same toothbrush. She'd get pregnant.
Yeah.
Some people are just fertile.
I picked up little late 80s things, that were just late 80s shock value. And of course, I'm going to draw the short straw here and be the first one in this podcast to use anything vulgar. But it's almost like they looked at Nicholson and they're like, all right, Jack, use the word pussy in a sentence and action. So
Right. I know.
I mean, the one thing I can sit there and say about Jack Nicholson, look at Jack Nicholson and just look at him in a picture. There's nothing sexual about him whatsoever. But when you put him in a film role, he does exude sexuality. He's very sexual.
Yep.
There's something about him. I don't know what it is, but there is something about him as far as from a sexual point of view that is actually like you can actually buy it. Why these women would actually
right? He was able to pull it off. He definitely was. Even though Cher's like, you're unattractive.
He had his pants pulled all the way up past his belly button when he was first trying to seduce Cher or Alex in the scene. you know, and I was just like that. I never noticed that until I watched it again. Where he had his pants pulled up. He just looked at the short jump with the little ponytail thing in the back. Yep. It was just hysterical.
Well, I mean, that's how you can tell if a guy's stuck in the 80s, if his pants are all, he's got those high-waisted trousers. And if you're still wearing them, they're still stuck in the 80s, because that's what guys wore, those high-dressed trousers that went over their belly button. I don't know why, but it was.
They were so unattractive, though. I mean.
But they had pleats.
Yeah. But I think they deliberately pulled these pants up just a little. Go back to the scene when I'm talking about it. If you go back and get a chance to look at it, and they were pulled up just a little bit more than they should have been to make him look more stumpy and attractive. I think.
Right.
It was just funny.
Yeah.
I think also what they've done with the film, also they turned it into a sisterhood kind of a film as well.
Yeah.
Which I think probably was quite good. Now I don't know. I mean, it's quite easy to find what feminists are saying about the book, Witches of Eastwick, how they're referring to it today. But you find very little about whether feminists would like this film if they were to view it today. Would they find it was women empowerment? Because to me, it came across as women empowerment, as far as, you know, the women kick the guy to the curb and they become independent women again and doing everything but singing with Destiny's Child.
Well, it kind of resonates still. It's sort of like the movie Practical Magic and, you know, and Thelma and Louise. It still translates well, even into 2018. Women still like it. It's still a chick flick. You know, I mean, I've never heard one real bad thing said about any of those movies as far as that goes. But like I said, if they had done it by the book, it probably would have been a much different, you know.
The witches would have burned that book.
I found another thing that's quite interesting about the whole thing is that there are some sexist things that do happen in the book. I mean, not in the book, but in the film itself. And I kind of wondered, like, viewing it today, I don't know when I viewed it when it first came out. I did see the film in 1987. I did went to the movie theaters and see it. I was living in Chicago at the time. And I have to sit there and say that, when the principal or the teacher, I'm not sure.
Grabs her ass.
And nowadays you watch and go, oh, like this. I don't know if we were supposed to find that funny in the day.
Hashtag me too.
I didn't think it was funny back then either. I don't think any woman thinks that's funny, no matter what. So, I mean, that's just, I was kind of hoping that he would get his, other than getting rained on, where he's droning on and on and on. I was kind of hoping something would happen to him.
Well, you got thrown up on.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
That was a bit over the top, and it happened more than once.
It kind of reminded me, was it Stand By Me, when he's telling a story, the big guy throwing up the berry pie all over the place or whatever.
No, what did you think about the scene, basically, where the women are talking about what fears they have with death, sort of thing? And
I thought I was wondering why it got so serious. And then you realize he's going to use that against them later on. Because I was just thinking, this is a fun romp. Why are we getting serious right now?
Yeah.
And then you realize that, I mean, it's going to take a serious turn, but even during the serious turn, it's kind of funny.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know that they're gonna defeat him in the end. I mean, we've seen enough movies. We know the women were.
They didn't even really defeat him in the end. Not even so much as a spoiler alert, but I mean, he kind of rears his head back up, and he's not really gone. He's kind of like in the shadows.
Yeah, but then they point their fingers at him and he goes away again. So they clearly have him under control.
I have to say, what I kind of wondered about is that you got Cher, when she becomes all sexy, she's got her sexy Cher gear on, showing a bit of skin. You got Susan Sarandon with her sexy gift. But then Michelle Pfeiffer's always wearing like a pantsuit. Yeah. Whenever she's feeling sexy.
Her Catwoman suit wasn't made yet.
That's true, it wasn't.
But do you think it's because
they had a couple of Batman props in that movie? Like which throws her up against, there's a Batman table in there, a Joker table.
Well, it's possible. They're both Warner Brother films, so it's possible. They would reuse a lot of their set designs and stuff and props.
Yeah, have you ever seen, we got to Warner Brothers studios, they have the prop warehouse, and it's like the most amazing thing. And people, everything's online and you can order what you want and put your name on it for your movie, but it had every piece of furniture, every age, it's just the most coolest place.
Well, we did last year we did the Seven Faces of Dr. Lau, And basically all the props that they have in this movie were from The Wizard of Oz.
Right.
So you would see these in the background of the Seven Faces of Dr. Lao. It's quite cool when they do reuse these props and you actually like pick them out, and especially stuff that's quite iconic looking. So, but yeah, as far as Michelle Pfeiffer, I just kind of wonder if it's because she was considered quite a sexy actress, because this is after The Fabulous Baker Boys, this is after Scarface, and I'm kind of wondering if she's trying to play down her sexiness, maybe, or maybe she thought that if I get too sexy, this could make the other two look old. I don't know.
There had to be a reason for the costuming the way it was. I thought that too, was when they were getting out of the car after he let her get healthy again, when he was mad and he was making her sickly, and they all get out of the car, and you said they all got their sexy wear on, and Michelle Pfeiffer gets out of the car and she's got a suit on, at least a coat on. So I mean, it's not showing any skin.
But outside of the odd movies, I mean, Michelle Pfeiffer rarely wears a dress anyway, when you think about it. I mean, Grease 2, her first film, I mean, she was dressed up as a tomboy. So she always kind of had that tomboyish thing about her, I guess. But
maybe that's what makes her so sexy, because she is that kind of girl next door, kind of, that doesn't have the prom dress on all the time.
Well, I'd say out of all of them, I think that Susan Sarandon has probably aged the best out of all of them.
Yes, she's so straight.
I mean, Cher has pretty much moved plastic surgery to a whole new dimension. And Michelle Pfeiffer, I mean, I think the last thing I saw her in was Mother, and she's getting that thing where I think you get Botox and it makes you look a bit hard after a while. We're starting to get to that point of no return sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, overall, I think it's an interesting film. I think that, it does promote sisterhood and womanhood. And I think from a feminist point of view, I think that women are probably going to be a lot more happier with the film than they are with the book.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything else you would like to add, Vicki, about The Witches of Eastwick?
No, I just thought it wasn't like the book. It wasn't dark, and it didn't portray these as horrible, needy women who were awful mothers, and it was really lighthearted, and it put women in a better light than the book did. I don't know. I just think that Updike might have had some kind of maternal issues or something. But it's a fun movie. It always has been fun, and I think that it will remain a fun movie. I mean, every time it's on TV or whatever, I'll always turn it on. I'll watch it. If I see it on, I'll sit there and I'll rewatch it again. It's just a fun movie.
What about yourself, Chad? What are your thoughts?
I'm a big fan of movies that really flesh out characters, character driven. I think that's a big problem that I have with a lot of modern horror movies is we don't know why we're scared of these things, or we don't know why we're rooting for these people to survive, because they never take the time to flesh out the characters in the movie. In my opinion, and I catch a lot of hell for this, the Twilight movies were that way for me, and they're still so popular. I don't get it.
I only watched it once. The Twilight movies is like you could. What was her name? What's her Kirsten?
Bella.
Oh, Bella. Whoever played, I can't remember her name. It leads
Kristen Stewart.
Yeah, she has got the total essence of a walnut when it comes to she's
the worst. She's the worst actress ever, and she keeps getting parts. I don't understand it.
I hear she's in the new Charlie's Angels that they're making.
No way! What's she gonna do? Like scowl everybody to death?
Yeah, her emotions. Her emotions run the gamut from A to B.
I know. I mean, she just nail all those emotions. Let me tell you.
I'm going to play devil's advocate with Kristen Stewart a little bit. I saw her in a movie where she did the film about the Runaways.
Okay.
And she was fantastic in that.
Oh, well, I haven't seen.
I did see that. She was.
I've seen her do these independent films, and she's very, very good in the independent ones. And I'm kind of wondering if because of Twilight. Have you ever read the book Twilight?
No.
Read Twilight. I have.
I read the first one, and I sit there and say that, first of all, it's written in the first person, and second of all, Bella is such a horrible freaking person. Who's basically
why does anyone like her?
Grown all the way through it. So I'm kind of wondering, like with Twilight the film, basically Bella doesn't smile in the book at all. So I'm kind of wondering if maybe that's a bypass. But saying that, I mean, I've only seen Kristen Stewart do a Twilight film, and I saw her do The Runaways. And after seeing the Runaways film about the Runaways,
Snow White, the Hunt.
She was very good.
I
didn't watch that. Life's too short. I didn't have time.
The Runaway, she was good in, I will admit. She played a good Joan Jett.
I haven't seen it. I'll have to see that one.
Yeah.
It's a good movie. It is.
She plays a really small part in that Sean Penn film, Into the Wild.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad performance from her as well.
Yeah. When I see her in small little independent films, I find her really good. When I see her in Hollywood films, I find her really horrible. So it's kind of a weird.
Yeah.
So saying that, I don't have any posters on my wall, and I won't be catching out the next Kristen Stewart film anytime soon.
But at least I know what to get you for Christmas.
Yes.
It's my calendar. Doll.
We're gonna
to go with your collection.
We're gonna get you a 3-hour film of her and Hayden Christensen just staring at each other for 3 straight hours.
We're gonna get you the box set, the special director's cut edition.
On Blu-ray. Yay. What about yourself, Barbara? What are your thoughts about the Witches of Eastwick?
I enjoyed it. I thought the characters were fun. I liked them. I liked their relationships. I knew it wasn't going to take a lot of, it was like a popcorn movie. It wasn't going to take a lot of thought. But Jack Nicholson was great, and I loved, The Shining scares the pants off me, but I liked him in this because it was the shining light, and there's no real evil involved, and I thought it was cute, and especially it didn't age badly. I thought it aged well. I mean, I didn't, watching it yesterday, I thought it was a decent, fun movie, and but I think I liked it better in respect to the book too, because I mean, at least the book I can see where it came from, but I really greatly preferred the movie.
Not too much going on between that and the book, except maybe the names.
Yeah.
And what about yourself, Vicki? What are your thoughts?
I agree with Barbara. I thought it was a lot of fun. I still think it's fun. I think it's a great chick flick still. And if you like Jack Nicholson and you want to see, the vintage Jack Nicholson and one of his, like where he's having his fit about women. Did God make women this way, or did you just do them on purpose?
Yeah.
That was like my favorite part of the whole movie, where he's having his fit in church.
Yes.
So, but it's just vintage Jack Nicholson, and I'm just a big fan of Jack. So I love any of his movies. But it was it's a fun watch.
I think from my point of view, I found that I think the film has a lot of very quotable lines in it, a lot of memorable lines in it.
Right.
And I do think it is a film that hinges on the people in it. I'm not sure if you took the same script and put a bunch of unknown people in it that you would get the same kind of a film. But I do have really good memories of the film. I did watch it again. I watched it a couple days ago, and I really, really enjoyed it. I went and bought a Blu-ray copy of it, which I'm not regretting, which I probably will watch again at some point in my life. And overall, I think it's really good. As far as from book to novel, I think it's a very good exercise about how Hollywood can buy a novel and turn it into something totally different. Whether that's good or bad. In this case, I think it works. And a lot of emphasis. I know that they made a TV series of Witches of Eastwick that didn't go very far. The only returning member of the cast was Veronica Cartwright. She came back for that. And I know that it lasted for about 10 episodes before it got canceled. So obviously it wasn't a big ratings winner. But I know that they've taken the book and they've taken the film and they made a musical out of it, which was a huge hit in London, is now on tour in Sydney and making its way to Broadway next year. And over here we had Lucy Arnaz play the part of Alexandra.
Cool.
So and that's getting very, very good notices at the moment. And the musical starred the guy who's in American Gods and Deadwood, the English actor. Ian.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, sorry. The name escapes me. It'll come back to me as soon as we're done recording, of course.
Exactly.
So that is our thoughts about the Witches of Eastwick, written by John Updike, and the film, the 1987's classic, directed by George Miller. So before we go, Chad, would you like to tell people where they can find you on social media and everywhere else?
You can find me pretty much everywhere on social media. If you just go to cderickmiller.com, that's Derek, D-E-R-I-C-K. Got links to all the social media and my involvement with journalism and lots of other things I've got going on. So, kind of a one-stop shop there.
And Barbara, where can people find you?
Well, if they can spell my name, they can find me. It's Barbara Venkataraman, VENKATARAMAN.blogspot.com. I'm on Amazon. I'm on iTunes and Goodreads. I'm a Goodreads author. I have the Jamie Quinn Cozy Mystery Series, and I have some award-winning humorous essay books, which hopefully will cheer you up if you're having a bad day.
Your name is everywhere except on the tip of Keith's tongue. That's
And of course, with our newsletter, you can find all the information about our special guest co-hosts, and they will be in the newsletter this month and the newsletter next month. And remember, we do have a special edition T-shirt that you can win if you join to our newsletter. All you need to do is go to www.llpodcast.com and sign into our newsletter, and you'll get a newsletter once a month. We promise not to spam you with needless, endless emails. We'll get one email per month that let you know what we'll be doing in our podcast and what we've been up to. So next week, we'll be doing a special show dealing with our new sponsor, Shudder, where Vicki and I will be discussing 3 films about what we like about Shudder and films that you should be able to see. We should also let you know that October is the season of the witch, and we'll also be covering this month. We'll be covering Suspiria by Dario Argento, The Witch by Robert Eggers on our 2-for-1, and our Alfred Hitchcock film of the month will be The Birds, starring Veronica Cartwright, Tippi Hedren, and Rod Taylor. So with no further ado, if you want to keep in contact with us, you can contact us through Facebook at www.facebook.com/LLpodcast or Twitter, LLpodcast, or by our website, which is www.llpodcast.com. So with no further ado, we're going to say goodnight. And just to remember that if you ever find yourself depressed, divorced, or your husband leaves you, or your husband just dies on you, contact your best friends and make yourself a coven and sit there and bring the devil into your life. So for no further ado, keep saying
like
goodnight.
we do in North Texas.
So we'd like to wish you all good night, and thank you for listening to the Literary License Podcast. Good night.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
All right. All right. Who should we be looking for?
Somebody nice, somebody you could like, somebody with a brain, somebody you could talk to.
Someone you could really be yourself.
Yes. Someone to watch over me. All right, I've had it with you two, okay?
Well, you would definitely have to be from out of town.
Well, especially considering what's in town, Janie.
A stranger, that would be interesting. A tall, dark prince traveling under a curse.
In Eastwick.
Romantic, a foreign prince on a big black horse.
All right, no, okay. If we're gonna have it, let's have it all.
Handsome, he should be really handsome.
Not too handsome. Nice eyes.
Nice ass. Huge. I prefer small.
Right,
Well, I do. Aesthetically, I prefer small. Sam was huge, and there were times when I just could not face it.
Well, I'm sort of in the middle myself. But, I mean, all right, who cares? As long as it works, it's in.
Well, it's a nice thought, but wishing for it's not going to make it happen, is it?
No. I don't think that men are the answer to everything.
No.
Then why do we always end up talking about them?
I've tried and tried to capture you. What more can one mere mortal do? My love potion boils and bubbles, poison darts, red poison, apples, cafe, casita, non-cafe, opportunity, sick breeze, Rambrunhilda, Nula Campana of St. James Eve, a dash of orange and ambergris. Incantate Mary Mac, all dressed in black. Angelique takes Barnabas from Joe's lips. Spiders can pray luck in blue. I'll will stew and brew. Incantate this magic spell. Miss Lucy's in heaven and the steamboat's in hell. Boils and bubbles, poof goes oh my, toil and trouble, blueberry wine and gladiola. Circe takes Glaucus away from Scylla, coriander, vervain and ginger root, Damiana, henbane and Thatcher's foot. Incantation with magic black and silver buttons all down her back.
Are you trying to seduce me?
Dream of seducing you, Alexandra. I wouldn't insult your intelligence with anything as trivial as seduction. But I would love to fuck you.